Alright, let's talk about Sean Combs. You might know him as Diddy, or P. Diddy, or Puff Daddy. He's a man of many names, and honestly it seems like many careers. He started as a music producer, founding Bad Boy Records back in the 90s, which became an absolute powerhouse. He launched the careers of artists like the Notorious Big and Faith Evans. But he wasn't just behind the scenes though. He stepped into the spotlight himself, releasing his own albums and becoming a global superstar. His music was everywhere, his videos were iconic, and his influence on hip-hop culture was, and still is, undeniable. He was really the face of a new era of entrepreneurial artists. But his empire didn't stop at music. No, that would be far too simple for a man like Diddy. He branched out into fashion with his Sean John clothing line, which became a massive success. Then came the fragrances, the restaurants, and of course his partnership with Ciroc Vodka, which turned a struggling brand into a status symbol. He even dipped his toes into acting. Essentially, if there was a way to build a brand and make money, Combs was there, turning everything he touched into gold. He became more than just a musician. He became a mogul, a symbol of ambition and the American dream, built on a foundation of hip-hop swagger. Over the years, Combs cultivated a very specific public image. He was the ultimate party host, the sophisticated businessman, the mentor to young artists. He was always seen at the most exclusive events, surrounded by the biggest stars, living a life of unimaginable luxury. His annual white party in the Hamptons was the stuff of legend. He presented himself as a family man, a father, and a leader in his community. This carefully crafted persona was a key part of his brand. It was an image of power, success, and control, polished to a high shine for public consumption and critical for his business ventures. This image of untouchable success and suave sophistication is absolutely crucial to understanding the story that follows. Because when serious allegations began to surface, they didn't just threaten Sean Combs the man, they threatened the entire multi-million-dollar Diddy empire. The accusations stood in stark, brutal contrast to the public figure he had spent decades building. It was a clash between the carefully curated myth and a horrifying emerging reality. And that is precisely why, when the first lawsuit dropped, the world stopped and paid very close attention to what was happening. The floodgates opened in November 2023. That's when a lawsuit was filed by his former romantic partner and singer, Cassie Ventura. The details in her complaint were shocking and deeply disturbing. She alleged a decade of abuse, including claims of physical violence, psychological manipulation, and sexual assault. This wasn't a vague accusation, it was a detailed, harrowing account that painted a picture of a terrifying and controlling relationship. The lawsuit claimed that Combs exerted complete control over her life, both personally and professionally, using his immense power and influence to keep her trapped. It was a bombshell revelation that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. One of the most chilling allegations involved an incident from 2016. She alleged that Combs had physically assaulted her in a hotel hallway. This wasn't just a claim in a legal document for long. In May 2024, CNN obtained and released surveillance footage from the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. The video, though silent, was incredibly graphic and appeared to directly corroborate Cassie's story. It showed a man, identified as Combs, chasing a woman down a hallway. He is seen grabbing her, throwing her to the ground, and then kicking her repeatedly. The footage was raw, brutal, and impossible to ignore. The release of this video changed everything. Before the footage, the allegations were just words on paper that could be debated, denied, and spun. But the video provided a visual. It was tangible evidence that people could see with their own eyes. For many, it transformed the case from a he-said-she-said dispute into something undeniable. It made the allegations feel real and immediate, sparking widespread public outrage and condemnation. The power of that silent, grainy footage was immense, shifting public opinion almost overnight. Suddenly, the story was no longer just about a legal dispute between two famous people. It became a national conversation about domestic violence, power dynamics in the music industry, and the dark side of celebrity. The hotel video was everywhere on the news, all over social media, and discussed in millions of homes. It forced a public reckoning with the allegations against one of the most powerful men in entertainment. This was the moment the scandal ignited, turning from a celebrity gossip item into a major legal and cultural crisis for Sean Combs. Once Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was filed, and especially after the hotel video surfaced, the media reaction was immediate and intense. It was, honestly, a perfect storm for a media frenzy. You had a hugely famous figure, shocking allegations of a criminal nature, and a story that touched upon themes of power, abuse, and celebrity culture. News outlets from legacy institutions like the New York Times and CNN to online blogs and social media influencers all jumped on the story. Every new development, every legal filing, and every statement was analyzed and amplified, creating a constant drumbeat of coverage that was impossible to escape. This initial lawsuit acted like a crack in a dam. Shortly after Cassie's case was settled, other accusers began to come forward with their own lawsuits, each containing more disturbing allegations of sexual assault, misconduct, and abuse, some stretching back decades. The media meticulously reported on each new case, creating a timeline of accusations that painted a pattern of alleged predatory behavior. This wasn't a single, isolated incident anymore, it was a cascade of claims from multiple people. The narrative snowballed, and Sean Combs went from defending one lawsuit to facing a full-blown crisis with multiple legal battles on several fronts. The public's fascination was fueled by the stark contrast between Combs' public persona and the horrific nature of the accusations. Here was a man who had built an image as a charismatic leader and family man, now being accused of being a violent predator. Social media platforms like X, formerly Twitter, and TikTok exploded with discussions, amateur analyses, and hot takes. Hashtags like #SurvivingDiddy trended for days. This immense public interest created enormous pressure not just on Combs, but on the legal system to act. The court of public opinion was holding its own trial long before any official one could begin. This is why the case captured the nation's attention so fiercely. It was more than just a celebrity scandal, it was a story about the potential fall of an icon. It raised uncomfortable questions about whether fame and wealth could shield powerful individuals from accountability. People were captivated by the legal drama, the human tragedy, and the broader implications for the entertainment industry. The stage was set for a high-stakes confrontation that would be watched by the entire world, with every move by the prosecution and the defense scrutinized under the brightest of spotlights. In March 2024, agents conducted highly publicized raids on properties linked to Sean Combs. News helicopters circled overhead, capturing footage of armed federal agents swarming the properties. The involvement of federal agents signaled it was now a major federal criminal investigation into allegations of sex trafficking, narcotics, and firearms. Investigators were taking these allegations with the utmost gravity. This federal intervention completely changed the legal landscape for Sean Combs. The stakes had been raised to the absolute maximum and the pressure was now immense. With a federal investigation underway, prosecutors began to build an airtight case, gathering evidence. The 2016 hotel surveillance video was a potential cornerstone. Investigators dug for financial records and sifted through data from seized devices, looking for communications. Prosecutors interviewed former employees, artists, and alleged victims, hoping to establish a pattern. Building this case had significant challenges, including the statute of limitations. Older claims might be impossible to prosecute. Another obstacle was witness credibility, as defense attorneys could argue motivations of money or grudges. Prosecutors needed corroborating evidence like texts or third-party testimony. Facing a legal crisis, Sean Combs hired top lawyers led by Aaron Dyer, known for high-profile cases. Their goal? To fight in court, with investigators, and in the press. The defense attacked the accuser's credibility, calling the allegations baseless and a witch hunt. Behind the scenes, they aimed to negotiate with prosecutors, highlighting weaknesses in the case. They built a narrative portraying Combs as a victim of extortion. After the 2016 video surfaced, Combs issued an apology, attempting to control the narrative and soften the impact. While lawyers battled in court, a louder trial raged online. Social media exploded after the hotel video surfaced, with millions acting as judge and jury. The defense faced a tainted jury pool. How do you find impartiality when the public thinks they've seen the crime? For prosecutors, public outrage could help or hurt. It might bring witnesses forward, but also raise the stakes for a conviction. The legal process and the court of public opinion collided, making it nearly impossible to separate fact from viral narrative. The justice system's challenge: keep the real trial insulated from the noise outside. The prosecution's key asset and challenge was Cassie Ventura. Her decade-long account gave the case a human face, but also made her a target for the defense. Every detail of her life would be scrutinized to undermine her credibility, especially after her civil settlement. The hotel video gave prosecutors rare objective evidence, but most allegations relied on testimony and old records. The defense would argue Cassie's motives were financial, not justice. Prosecutors had to prove she sought accountability, not a payout. Balancing her role as both victim and credible witness was a tightrope act. Time was the prosecution's enemy. Many allegations were simply too old to charge. Statutes of limitations meant even credible stories from the 90s and early 2000s were often legally untouchable. Prosecutors had to find creative ways to connect old claims to newer, chargeable offenses. The defense used these deadlines as a shield, pushing to exclude old prejudicial evidence. The legal fight over what the jury could hear happened long before trial. Prosecutors needed to show a pattern of behavior, but the law only let them tell part of the story. The challenge: build a compelling case with only a few recent chapters. To bypass time limits, prosecutors considered RICO racketeering charges, treating Combs as the head of a criminal enterprise. This would let them use old crimes as evidence of a larger conspiracy. But proving RICO is tough, they needed insiders to testify about the organization's structure and Combs' leadership. These witnesses often had their own baggage, making them easy targets for the defense. The prosecution had to weave separate allegations into a single story of organized crime. If they failed to prove the enterprise, the whole case could collapse. The stakes were high, either a sweeping conviction or a narrow, weaker case. The scandal began with civil lawsuits, not criminal charges, complicating the prosecution's narrative. The defense argued the accusers were after money, not justice, pointing to large settlements and confidentiality agreements. Prosecutors had to explain why victims might seek civil remedies first. Sometimes it's the only path to accountability. Every statement from the civil suits could be used in the criminal case, making consistency crucial. Any change in a witness's story would be seized on as proof of dishonesty. The civil suits brought the allegations to light, but also created a minefield for prosecutors. The defense's main strategy: attack the accuser's credibility. With damning evidence like the hotel video, they couldn't deny everything. So they targeted the accuser's motives and histories. Private investigators dug into every detail, looking for inconsistencies or questionable choices. The defense painted the accusers as opportunists chasing fame and money, not justice. This approach could create reasonable doubt, but risked appearing as victim-blaming in the Me Too era. The defense had to question the accuser's stories without alienating the jury. It was a delicate, high-stakes balancing act throughout the trial. Building on attacks against individual accusers, the defense crafted a narrative of a coordinated conspiracy. Lawyers publicly suggested the lawsuits were not coincidental, but an organized shakedown to pressure Combs. This reframed Combs from a predator to a victim targeted by a greedy group. This narrative aimed to shift the jury's focus from the allegations to the accuser's motivations. Highlighting the timing of lawsuits after Ventura's settlement, the defense suggested a copycat phenomenon. This narrative dismisses the pattern of accusations as a widespread plot, discrediting accusers for financial gain. The 2016 hotel surveillance video of Sean Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura was challenging for the defense. Their strategy became damage control. Combs released an apology video after the footage leaked. He called his behavior inexcusable, spoke about seeking help, and aimed to show remorse. Legally, the defense would argue the video didn't prove other allegations. They'd isolate the incident, framing it as a mistake, not a pattern. Admitting fault, they'd argue, proved Combs' honesty, lending credibility to denials of other allegations. The strategy aimed to contain fallout and build a legal firewall against the wider investigation. The defense leaned into Sean Combs' celebrity status, portraying him not as above the law, but as a target because of his fame and success. They argued wealth and influence attract those who want to tear you down. Every lawsuit is a consequence of living in the public eye. By emphasizing Combs as a self-made man, they contrasted him with accusers portrayed as opportunistic. In today's cancel culture, reputation can be destroyed by unproven allegations. The defense hoped this narrative would create reasonable doubt. It was a bold attempt to weaponize Combs' fame, turning liability into a shield. Long before any official trial, a verdict was being handed down on the internet. When the 2016 hotel surveillance video hit the web, it went viral. On TikTok, users dissected the footage. On X, hashtags like #SurvivingDiddy trended globally, creating outrage. The presumption of innocence was practically non-existent. For millions, seeing the video was enough. This created a narrative that Sean Combs was guilty. This put immense pressure on brands associated with Combs. It's an interactive event where everyone can voice their opinion. The defense fought not just prosecutors but a global army of online critics. While social media amplified raw emotion, the mainstream media legitimized and amplified the story on a global scale. When CNN aired the 2016 hotel video, it lent institutional credibility to the footage. This transformed it into a central piece of evidence, forcing other media outlets to treat it with utmost seriousness. This sustained attention ensured the story never faded from the public consciousness. This intense media scrutiny had a profound effect on the public's perception of the case. The media's framing of the story often centered on the themes of power, abuse, and the dark side of celebrity. However, this media frenzy also highlighted the delicate balance between informative reporting and sensationalism. The Sean Combs case tapped into a larger cultural conversation, simmering since the rise of the Me Too movement. The hashtag Surviving Diddy echoed Surviving R. Kelly, framing allegations within a narrative of powerful men preying on others. This case became a moment of public reckoning, especially within hip-hop, forcing a re-evaluation of Diddy's legacy as a symbol of black excellence. The public outcry and support for Cassie Ventura may have emboldened other accusers to come forward, knowing they wouldn't be alone. Ultimately, the case transformed into a cultural touchstone, a litmus test on issues of domestic violence and accountability. After the lawsuits, raids, and media frenzy, you might expect a dramatic courtroom showdown. But Cassie Ventura's lawsuit was settled out of court one day after filing for an undisclosed amount. Settlements are common, especially with wealthy defendants. It's a business transaction, payment in exchange for dropping the lawsuit and signing an NDA. This makes the problem disappear quietly. Legally, it's not an admission of guilt. But the speed of the settlement spoke volumes in the court of public opinion. It looked like an attempt to silence an accuser. Though a formal jury never weighed in, the public reached a thunderous verdict. Their decision was fueled by the 2016 hotel surveillance video. For millions, seeing the assault rendered legal technicalities meaningless. The public jury saw the video and the case was closed. This public verdict had immediate and devastating consequences for Combs's empire. Brands and companies began to run for the hills. His honorary degree from Howard University was rescinded. This was the public jury delivering its sentence cancellation. Regardless of court outcomes, his legacy was irrevocably tarnished. So why settle? Why would Sean Combs, a man with near limitless resources to fund a legal war, choose to end Cassie Ventura's lawsuit so quickly? The answer lies in risk management. A civil trial is unpredictable. It involves a process called discovery, where both sides have to turn over evidence to each other. For Combs, this meant potentially handing over years of private text messages, emails, financial records, and internal documents. It would have meant Cassie Ventura, and potentially other witnesses, giving sworn testimony in depositions that would become public record. A settlement was a way to slam the door shut on that process before it even began. For Cassie Ventura, settling also made a certain kind of sense. Dragging a powerful figure like Sean Combs through a multi-year court battle is an exhausting, traumatic, and financially draining experience. Even with a strong case, there is never a guarantee of victory. The defense would have subjected her to a brutal cross-examination, digging into every corner of her life to discredit her. A settlement offered a guaranteed outcome. It provided financial compensation for the harm she alleged she suffered and, crucially, it offered closure, allowing her to avoid the emotional toll of a prolonged public fight while still achieving a form of accountability. The speed of the settlement also suggests the sheer explosive power of the evidence Ventura's team claimed to have. Her lawyers likely presented Combs's team with a preview of the evidence they had gathered, which may have included not just the hotel video, but other materials that were even more damning. Faced with the prospect of that evidence becoming public during a trial, Combs's lawyers would have advised him that the potential damage to his reputation and his other ongoing legal battles was catastrophic. The quick settlement was likely a calculated business decision to contain a bomb before it detonated in a public courtroom. Ultimately, the settlement was a pragmatic, if unsatisfying, conclusion. It served the immediate interests of both parties. Combs bought silence and contained the legal damage, at least from this one specific lawsuit. Ventura received compensation and avoided a grueling trial. However, it left the public without a definitive resolution. It prevented the full story from being told under oath and tested by the adversarial process of a trial. The settlement was a solution, but it was not the truth. It was a private arrangement that left the biggest questions unanswered and, in doing so, only fueled more public speculation about what else was being hidden. What if Cassie Ventura's civil case had gone to trial? Her testimony and the hotel video would have been powerful, but the defense would have attacked her credibility. The verdict would have hinged on which narrative the jury believed. The outcome depended on the jury's life experiences and views on power dynamics. The settlement means we'll never know how a jury would have judged the evidence. With a federal criminal investigation ongoing, a real trial still looms. That jury will face the same questions, but the verdict won't be about money, it will be about freedom. When you peel back all the layers of the Sean Combs saga, the shocking allegations, the viral videos, the federal raids, you are left with a fundamental and deeply uncomfortable question about the nature of justice itself. Does it operate the same way for everyone? The case serves as a stark illustration of how fame, wealth, and power can warp the legal process. From the very beginning, this was never going to be a standard case. Combs had the resources to assemble a legal defense team that most people could only dream of, a team capable of fighting a multi-front war against accusers, the media, and the federal government. This isn't a criticism, it's just a fact. The ability to afford elite legal representation creates a different class of justice. This case forces us to confront the idea of a two-tiered system. For the average person accused of a crime, the process is swift and often brutal. They face overworked public defenders and immense pressure to take plea deals. For a figure like Sean Combs, the landscape is entirely different. He can afford to prolong the process, to file endless motions, to hire private investigators, and to launch sophisticated PR campaigns. The civil settlements are another example of this. The ability to write a multi-million-dollar check to make a lawsuit disappear is a tool available only to the ultra-wealthy, leaving the public with no official resolution. The role of celebrity cuts both ways, creating a paradox. On one hand, Combs's fame made him a target for intense scrutiny. The media frenzy would not have happened to an unknown person. His high profile amplified the allegations globally, emboldening more victims to come forward. His fame made him vulnerable to a public verdict of cancellation delivered by the court of public opinion. His celebrity status acted as an accelerant for his public downfall. On the other hand, the defense leaned on celebrity status as a shield. They crafted a narrative that Combs was a victim of his own success, a black entrepreneur targeted for his wealth. This celebrity defense creates special reasonable doubt, suggesting the rich are vulnerable to false accusations. It asks juries to view evidence through cynicism about accusers' motives. The case becomes a powerful study of how fame interacts with the legal system, simultaneously making one a bigger target and providing more powerful weapons for defense. As of May 24, 2024, the story is unwritten. The federal criminal investigation looms large. The world awaits a potential criminal indictment. This trial's stakes are prison time. The case has sparked a cultural conversation about power dynamics in the music industry. We watch a legacy hang in the balance. As the investigation continues, the final verdict awaits. The fallout will be felt for years.